Hi everybody. In today's video I'm going to be tying some upright quill wings. I was asked by one of the YouTube subscribers to my channel to tie these, and I definitely enjoy tying these, even though they're not for the faint of heart. I'll be tying these wings out of duck quills today, and I'll try to go over the entire process because these are not the easiest things in the world to tie. There's lots of cheaters out there now, these little strips that you can buy that you can just substitute for the wing, and they make it a lot easier. However, they're not the authentic upright quill wing. So I'm going to kind of go over everything, show you my process for tying these quill wings, and then I'm going to tie in a set of quill wings. I won't be tying a specific fly today, instead just illustrating how to tie upright quill wings, and today I'll be using a duck quill. So I hope you enjoy this video, and now I'm going to go over some of the materials and the methods that I use to prepare everything. Alright, let's examine some of the tools used for these upright quill wings. Well, first of all, I guess before even doing that, let me show you a sample set of the wings. This is a set of the wings that you'd like to use whenever you're tying this fly. It's from a matched set of duck wings. That's what I'm using. So here's a set of duck wings. Whenever you decide that you want to, remove some quills for these flies, you just turn the duck over, these wings over. Make sure that you pick out a feather from one side, one of the primaries, and another from the other side that are a matching size. And the reason I say you want a matching size, and I'll show you a little bit more detail what I mean by matching size. When you take a look at this feather, from this quill to these points, you want to make sure those lengths are nearly identical on both feathers. So again, from this quill over to here, matching with this one over to here. Thus, whenever you're lining them up, when you're tying with them, you want that feather to be exactly the same size, so they line up properly. And that's one of the problems. That's where a lot of people run into trouble. And it's taking a feather that's been used like this and saying, where do I start cutting? How do I make sure I make the cut the same size as the opposite feather, as the matching feather? There's a few tools that you can use. One of the first ways I was ever taught was by taking a paper clip, determining what gap you'd like, the spacing of the gap, and then using this as your tool to remove them with that same gap, so you have the same gap every time. And I'll just show you quickly how to do this. So if I want a gap of, we'll say approximately ½ inch, somewhere around there, I would create a paper clip, bend it in that fashion that I want, and I'm simply going to poke it through this feather. I'll try my best to show you on the camera. Bring it up so the feather's unmarried now, and I'll have that little piece that I like to cut. And the reason that you want to use the paper clip is because it'll be uniform from one wing over to another. There's another little tool that my uncle gave me years ago. He got this from an old herder's catalog. I have no idea when he got it. It's a great little tool used specifically for this purpose. There's one side with these very large, kind of dangerous looking points, and another side with smaller ones. A very easy way to use these when making these quill wings is to actually and physically set your wing in, lock it, and press down. And when those points go through the feathers, they've now created uniform widths the whole way up and down that feather. Now you can cheat a little bit before putting this tool inside the feather. I've heard of guys that will epoxy the back of the wing or glue the back of the wing, place the wing in, push down, and then they're all locked in. You let it dry on its own, and then whenever you lift it up, you'll have a bunch of perfect little quills that you can simply go through and snip off one at a time. And after you're done snipping, they'll all just kind of lay perfectly. So it's a little cheating way, but it's still a good way that works. I won't lie. I have done it before. Now I typically don't. In fact, I haven't done that for years. But this is a nice little tool. If you ever see a little tool like this, or if you attempt to make something like this, it's a really simple jig to help get these quills whenever you're tying them on your dry flies and for your wet flies. The one final tip I'll give you before showing you how to actually tie one is that a lot of guys will mention the good part of the feather and the bad part of the feather. And I just want to illustrate that for everybody right now. This bottom part of the feather it's very webby, and typically if you look up maybe this halfway across the feather, it seems just like there's a different shade there. Whenever that different shade kicks in, those are really the great parts of the feather. So this upper section right from here to here would be the better parts, and I would probably even cut that down. It's just a little webby in there. So this part's a little too webby. just a little loose. There's not really much to tie on. So I would typically not use any of this down here, and I would use this upper 2/3 part of the feather when tying. Whenever you're tying these, you always use the longer side of that quill. And again, you want to separate it. And whenever I make my first separation, I'm going to be separating them somewhere around this point right here. Let's see if you can see this. Around this point, and I'll make sure whatever I take off on one feather, I take off the same side on the other feather. So I'm going to snip that off. I'm going to stop the camera for a second, snip it. I'll show you what the feather looks like, and then I'll begin tying that onto the hook. Alright, I've trimmed my feathers. I trimmed this part of this feather, this upper section of both of them, and I'm left with these two little pieces here. The feathers are still married together, and what I'm going to do is stack them on top of each other prior to tying this in. I like the dull sides facing out. There's always a dull and a lighter side on these feathers. So to do that, I'm going to take one of these feathers, turn it upside down with the dull side down, then pick up the other one, make sure the dull side's facing me, and put it directly on top and pressing down at the tips so I know that they're stacked together. Once I have them stacked together, I'm ready to tie them onto the hook. I'll just pick them up so you can see them. You can move them around. You don't really have anything to worry about because you can always marry the feathers back together if they do come apart. But right now I have my, my set of feathers, and I have them stacked and they're ready to be placed on my hook. Alright, so I have a standard dry fly hook. Let me build up just a little foundation with some 10-aught gray thread. The 10-aught really, I don't know if that's significant at all. I just like this slate gray color when I'm tying in this quill wing. So I just have a little foundation built up. I'm going to just stop the thread around this spot. Now I have my quills lined up, my feathers lined up by the tips, and that's the key. So they're lined up by the tips. I'm going to place them straight on top of the hook. So they'll be lined up just like this. I've seen some people attempt to tie them in this way. All the feathers get bunched up. The same thing when you're trying to immediately tie them in upright, they will get bunched up. The key to this is that you want them straight on top of the hook, and you have to use the pinch method and be very firm whenever you're using this method. So I have them lined up. I'm going to show you from the opposite angle what's going to happen. I'm going to be bringing my thread up. I'm going to lock it in place and then bring it immediately down the back side. Now I'm doing that opposite, so I'm going to do it from my angle over here. So I'm going to bring my thread straight up, lock it behind my thumb. Now my thread's free. I'm going to bring it around the other side, the side facing you. Lock it in place. I'm still pinching these feathers and pull straight down. I'm going to do it one more time. Straight up, pinch, bring it down the other way, straight back down. Now these feathers are locked in, so I'm going to bring a couple thread wraps back, clip off my excess, and now I have these feathers tied in. So that was one of the first hard parts of this fly. You'll notice there might be a little bit of separation, but that'll be okay. You should be able to marry these back together depending on how well you have them tied in. What I'm going to do next is just bring a couple thread wraps up, then I'm going to pinch them, pull them back, and place about 2 wraps in front of them so they go straight up in the air. At that point then, I'm going to take the far feather, the one that's closest to you, place a wrap between it and the near feather. So now my thread's at the front, and then do the opposite. I'm going to grab the feather that's closest to me, pull it away, place a wrap between it and the feather facing you, and now I have them locked in. At this point, I'm going to just kind of tuck them back just a little bit, make sure they're still married together nicely. I'm going to tie off my thread just to get that out of the way so you can see exactly what these look like. Okay. Now I'm going to just, again, you can play with them just a little bit. They should still be married together. Fortunately, mine are still married together, so it worked out just as it should. But I'd like to give you a better look at exactly what's going on here. So if I'm looking at them from the top angle down, these are the feathers. They're separated. There's a nice amount of feathers on both sides. If I'm looking at this side right here, they look just a hair off to me if I was evaluating this fly. So I want to play with them just maybe a little bit. It looks like their tips are just a little bit off. I think I'd have to marry them back together. If I play with them for a few seconds, I'm sure I'd be able to get those back together. The ones that are on my side seem to look really nice. They seem to have worked out really well. I can get these to stand up a little bit as I would whenever I tie it on and whenever I tie on my dry fly hackle. So this is exactly how you want them to look. This is from all angles. I will give you a couple little pointers and a couple little things that I've noticed while I still try to play with these ones and get them married back together. And whenever I initially started tying this fly, one of the issues that I had, I would have my thread on, and whenever I would go the pinch method, I would go straight up and I would bring my thread back around the other way and have it pinched, but then I'd let this angle of my thread go back a little bit. By angling back, as I pulled it around, I would go once, twice, and then it would fray and it would catch against that hook, thus causing lots of frustration. So remember, whenever you are using this pinch method and you go up, you really want to drop it straight down. If you tend to go back at all, and again, this is when you're near the eye of the hook, when you tend to get that thread to go back, it will hit off that barb and it will just immediately pop, and you'll be a little frustrated and upset because you might lose those wings. The other little piece of information I can give you related to these flies is to check out some books by Mike Valla. He is a really incredible Catskill a fly tyer, and he's got some great flies that have these wings in them. And I highly encourage you to check out some of his books on both wet flies and dry flies, and really take a closer look at some of his upright quill wings, because they are absolutely gorgeous and a piece of work. So I hope you enjoyed learning about this. Please feel free to post a video reply. Show me maybe some of the ones that you've tied in relationship to this. Let me know if you have any better methods or anything that's working for you as well. As always, I thank you for watching my YouTube videos, and I hope you were able to pick up one or two pieces of information from this one. Thanks, everybody.